Okay, hey everybody, Nick Livingston with the Honeit podcast. Excited to have you back. Today's episode, we have Kyle Brown and Lauren Wedemeyer from Everly Health. We've been working with them for some time, and it's been fun to see and learn about their company. Everly Health is developing new innovative ways to, diagnose yourself and home treatments. Obviously, that was huge during COVID, but they test a lot of other things beyond just COVID. So, Kyle and Laura, maybe we could talk a little bit about Everly Health. Could you just kind of give us a high-level view of the company, maybe the areas that each of you focus on?
Yeah, sure. I can start, I guess. Everly Health. Everly Health was formed in 2021. Originally, we were called Everly Well, which is still a brand that we have within our organization, and we sell diagnostic kits, basically mostly for at-home collection for consumers. So you can buy the kit online and get yourself tested for 30 plus kits that we offer to consumers. And I support our laboratory. So I hire for everything: laboratory, clinical, medical affairs, compliance. And Kyle, you can chime in and talk about what you support.
Yeah, I help support all the hiring for engineers, product managers, starting a little bit into sales as well, mainly on the engineering side. So I help find the people who launched our first mobile app last week and all those kinds of fun projects. It's fun to see that kind of behind the scenes part of the business.
That's awesome. So technology, but also the kind of the scientific roles. What obviously product management and some of the engineering roles and mobile developers, I mean, those are all difficult to find just because every company's, looking for that. How are you communicating, the value prop of Everly Health and attracting those folks?
I think we're a one-of-a-kind business. There are a lot of other companies who do some kinds of at-home tests, but we really feel like we have the widest range of tests to make healthcare more accessible from the comfort of your home. So we're at the forefront of a rapidly growing industry. We really think we can disrupt the healthcare industry kind of overall. So you're not just coming here for a software engineering job or coming for whatever else. You're coming here to make a difference. I think a lot of people are really passionate about making healthcare more accessible. So it's usually a pretty fun thing to talk about with candidates.
I was going to say, it's always important to have kind of that bigger picture in terms of what we're talking about in terms of roles. And, your waking life is, 70% work, right? So it's like important to have a mission to anchor around at North Star. That's fantastic. Lauren, what are you finding on kind of the laboratory side of things? What type of roles, what type of technicians, what type of specialists are you trying to find? And I'm curious, I haven't done that type of recruitment, so I'd be curious what kind of tools and how are you getting in front of these folks?
Yeah, we hire a number of medical laboratory scientists and technologists in the laboratory, as well as lab assistants as well for more entry-level roles, all the way up to we have R&D scientists as well. So we're very, I would say, like scientific and technical on the scientific side company. So we design and research and develop our own assays. And so those are all things that I'm placing people in teams that are doing all these really cool things and helping us to grow Everly from a laboratory standpoint. So those are what I'm supporting right now.
Fantastic. Where are these folks always, like, are they on LinkedIn? Do you find them on job sites? Do you have good inbound applicants flowing for some of these specialized roles? How are you attracting those candidates? How are they getting into those pipelines?
Yeah, we do get a good amount of applications, but otherwise I do a lot of outreaches. Some people are on LinkedIn, but not a ton of laboratory professionals are on LinkedIn. It's mostly like Indeed, or you're finding their resume somehow. That's how I'm seeing candidates. It's hit or miss if laboratory professionals are on LinkedIn, I feel like.
Did you ever call the lab? Is that still possible to cold call labs? I don't even know if that's a thing anymore.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I've never cold called the lab before. I could try.
Fantastic. What's so Indeed and some of those job boards is where you're sourcing, some of these candidates from. What have you found that works? I mean, to Kyle's point about it being a mission-driven organization, are you finding you include that messaging in your initial touch or your first your outbound email or message through Indeed?
I usually I do have a couple templates, I guess, maybe that I would do for outreaches, right? An initial cold outreach. One of them does, mention our mission driven. It doesn't mention what our mission is, but and then I typically link, the job description or a company in the outreach, and they'll be able to find some information online about us. That's what I'm doing. Kyle, do you mention a lot about the company in your outreaches?
Yeah, I mean, I guess each industry is a little different. Usually on the software engineering side, you just get straight to the point for the most part when you're messaging engineers, because they just get, probably dozens of messages a week at least. But yeah, I usually put in there that, hey, we're revolutionizing the at-home healthcare industry, or we're at the forefront of diagnostic-driven healthcare. I usually put a line or two in there, but right at the beginning to catch their attention, and then I dive into whatever the role is.
Awesome. Kyle, I know you're pretty active on social media. I've enjoyed your posts on LinkedIn and things like that. And it's clever. It's like unique. It's a way to filter through that noise. I know there's just a lot of, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, just a lot of noise out there with social media, but you seem to be cutting through it quite well. Are you finding that candidates are responding to some of that? Are you finding that's good to build the Everly brands? Curious about your thoughts on social. How much time do you spend on it? Do you plan your posts? Do you think of them impromptu? Curious about that because they're really good.
Yeah. I think LinkedIn is a good place to source, just on the feed of LinkedIn. Cause that's usually where you can find people who are actively looking. That's how I filled the role recently. Was I had a friend who I was connected with, post on LinkedIn. He was looking for a DevOps engineering role. I reached out to him right away. Got him through the process and got him the job, which was great because DevOps is a very difficult role to find people for right now. Software engineering in general, it's a very tough market. And then that one overall is even tougher. So being able to, not have to send dozens or hundreds of messages every week, it was great. It was nice to be able to go on LinkedIn and find people directly. That's kind of like a work smarter, not harder kind of mentality, I guess, is just having as many connections as you can and going from there to find the right people. So it's just another tool, I guess, for sourcing or recruiting.
Awesome. And you're building that kind of personal brand yourself too, just in terms of, your expertise. That's great. Do you guys use LinkedIn Recruiter? Do you have a premium license for some of that? And do you use the InMails and templates for projects? Are you using LinkedIn Recruiter? Okay.
Yeah, I think I think depending on the industry that we're recruiting in, we use different platforms. I use Hire Easy and most, and then LinkedIn Recruiter second. I think it kind of depends on where people are, because there'll be a lot of software engineers on LinkedIn Recruiter and through Hire Easy. So those are the two that I stick to, because that's where I can find everybody. But and a lot of times there aren't as many lab professionals on LinkedIn, so Lauren has to go through other avenues at times.
That's great. Yeah, we're friends with the Hire Easy team. They just rebranded. Are you liking their kind of new product and platform? I know they've added some new features and functionality recently.
Yeah, it's just different. I think they have benefits that LinkedIn Recruiter doesn't, and vice versa. It's nice to just have two different platforms for finding people.
Awesome.
Yeah, I really like Hire Easy. I think it's pretty easy and intuitive platform, but it's definitely nice to have two options to go to Hire Easy. I think I'm very similar to Kyle. I'll probably go to Hire Easy first and LinkedIn second. I also source through Google X-ray searches, because if those laboratory professionals aren't on LinkedIn, I'll try to find them some other way. So just trying to add different tools to your tool belt, right?
That's fantastic. I know, Kyle, you mentioned hiring or building the first Everly mobile app. I remember a while back you posted, I think it was a job preview from Honeit about that product manager job. Was that the same one, or was it for the mobile developer? But I was curious how those are helping, if you're using job previews on LinkedIn to kind of a standout and differentiate?
Yeah, I think we might use it for a couple. I think it might have been for the product manager and for the mobile QA. Those are both great because we were able to. A lot of times, candidates will have a lot of upfront questions that would be best answered by the hiring manager. So it's great to have a list of 5 or 7 pre-answered questions directly from the hiring manager and recorded, so you can't mistranslate anything. It's great to be able to either send it to a candidate when they have questions, or just put it in your outreach message overall. Say, hey, if you're interested in this role, check out these thoughts from the hiring manager about why this role is exciting or why it's important to Everly Health. So for a team like that was very, very important to get our mobile team hired for. Was another added benefit or added incentive to finding the right people.
Awesome. Yeah, we think it's funny. We kind of stumbled across that, but we realized in doing this that like intake calls with hiring managers, those are interviews too, right? We're interviewing the hiring manager about why the job's open, how it adds value to the business, like what's exciting about the role. Like we get to hear all those answers during our intake calls, but being able to then get some of that out there, for candidates to hear we're seeing some really interesting gains there.
Yeah. And we're doing those calls anyway, even if we don't record it, we're still doing those intake calls with hiring managers. So why not just kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and just have your own separate notes and have those recordings to share with candidates.
Do you find it ever helpful to be able to kind of rewind the tape on, just what a hiring manager said about the role and just, what was that thing he said? Like being able to kind of look back and either check out that technology or that language that they mentioned or, some of that. There's just so much information contained in these calls we have every day that I find it helpful to be able to go back or search it,
Yeah, I mean, it is, as good as we can be at taking notes on a call, and more often than not, we'll miss something. So it's nice to be able to go back and hear their entire answer, so we know like everything they're looking for, or again, like so we don't mistranslate anything or say the wrong thing. It's basically like an extra, like we're just double checking, I guess, that our notes and assessment are right about the position.
What maybe we can transition a bit. What are y'all seeing in the current talent acquisition market? Right, we see the news stories seem to be like we're slowing down, but then a lot of the clients we work with, things are picking up, and it's as crazy as ever, and it's more competitive as ever. Well, how are things going within Everly? What's your take on the current talent market?
Go ahead.
You want to go?
If you have a good answer. I'm thinking still. If you have an answer.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it just kind of depends on the position. Like there have been some roles where I haven't had to source at all because we get so many applicants for it. And there's some roles where we get maybe 1 applicant every couple of weeks because it's such a competitive market. So there's still plenty of people looking for jobs out there. Still plenty of people who are hiring. Like we will, never stop hiring for software engineers. We're always going to have some kind of need for somebody. So it's still out there, still people looking for work, still people who are hiring, and still companies who are going to continue to hire. But it is just interesting to see which positions, like product manager, for instance, we would get, multiple applicants a day. DevOps engineer, that would be 1 every 2 weeks. So it just depends, I guess, on the specific position or technology people are working with.
Are you seeing the same, Lauren? Does it even, specialist roles or technical technician roles? Is there a difference in inbound versus outbound that you do?
I would probably echo some things that Kyle said that, sometimes we'll have roles that are, will be a drip in the bucket as applicants are kind of coming in onesie twosies. Other times we'll have a lot to go through. So there's definitely a lot of people looking in the marketplace, to Kyle's point. A lot of people still trying to find the right opportunity or a new opportunity, maybe. I think in the laboratory or, general life science space, things have been crazy the last couple of years, especially due to COVID. And we've just seen so much uptick and then downtick in the laboratory community. So I think it really depends on what I've seen depends on the organization and how much, maybe drop off they've experienced from COVID, if the laboratory is still hiring or not. But there still always opportunity, I think, as well. Like you said, to your point, Nick, some companies are still going crazy right now. So it's just really depends, I feel like, is what I've seen.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about the laboratory, technicians, and just that, for the last couple of years, there's been that strain on that industry like we've never seen. I wonder if that led to like burnout, or people being overwhelmed and quitting and then backfilling was the challenge, or if now people are finally able to take a break and consider like making a move, or if now they're just kind of exhausted from the past couple of years of everything that's happened to the supply chain and the industry and so I mean, just interesting to try to figure out the approach there. What are you seeing that for candidates that you do engage with? I would imagine you're talking to them, doing a screen with them. Are you finding that we, as a company, to be competitive, we need to accelerate or expedite the interview process for candidates to kind of get those offers out sooner? Are you finding yourself changing your internal interview experience or process to kind of move things quicker?
For Everly, what I've seen is our process has been pretty tried and true. And Kyle has a very specific process that's even different than mine. And I feel like that's pretty consistent kind of across the board, that it's the same process over and over again. So we try to not deviate for the sake of creating an equitable candidate experience. I think where possible, but definitely where, to your point, Nick, a lot of candidates are getting snatched up quickly. So trying to figure out how to maybe mitigate those scheduling periods or those downtimes kind of in between, maybe, to try to push through the process and still keep it the same. That's what I've been trying to do. What about you, Kyle? What are you seeing on your end?
Yeah, I think I just try to be as open and transparent as possible about the interview process with candidates. Like if we're right at the beginning of a process, I'll tell them, I'd say, hey, we just started recruiting people who are taking screening calls like this week. It makes them feel better that they're not going to lose out to the position next week when somebody finishes the final. And especially for software engineers, like there are certain companies that will have like a 5, 6, 7 stage process. And a lot of times candidates don't want to do that. Or if they hear there's a coding challenge, they will instantly turn down the interview. So taking feedback from the industry and from candidates out there to adapt our process has definitely been a helpful situation. And of course, at the end of the call, just make sure to outline and say, hey, here are the 3 or 4 steps. We try to move as efficiently as we can, but obviously never rush anybody. And the more transparent we can be with candidates about our process and how we've adapted it to fit what people are looking for, just seems to definitely help quite a bit.
Yeah, that's great. And that's great. You've got it down to kind of a 3 to 4 step process. That's quite, that's pretty efficient if you can get the stakeholders involved and things like that. Kyle, are you asking like some technical questions on your initial phone screen and sharing some of those technical answers with hiring managers through Honeit? And Lauren, are you asking do you have structured call guides where you can ask laboratory questions and quickly get to know someone's domain expertise there?
Yeah, so usually the hiring managers will give us like a list of questions, like, hey, ask about their experience in this technology or that technology. And similar to recording the hiring manager call, it's great we'll record the candidate call. So a lot of times they talk about things that I don't understand. So it's great to be able to go back and maybe listen to that call or that question a couple different times to either get everything down they said or to share that specific question with the hiring manager and say, hey, here's the response to this technology and how they learned it, or the biggest challenge they face as a software engineer. It's a great kind of like fallback for if you aren't able to record every single thing they say on paper or notes. You can go back and get exactly what they said word for word. Like for example, I had one candidate who he had led a team for like a few years as a manager, and I didn't write that part down. Or something close to that. And then when we were trying to get his offer approved, we were faced with questions like, I don't know if this person has led a team. I'm not sure if they're right for the position. So I went back to that call, found those notes and said, here's exactly what he said. He has led a team for 3 to 5 years. Definitely was one thing that ended up saving that candidate and getting them the job.
Fantastic. Yeah, kind of candidate rediscovery or conversation rediscovery. We're starting to see, we've upgraded some of the search capabilities where I don't know if in the top right, but you can search for keywords or skills or programming languages and quickly rediscover, oh yeah, that candidate I spoke with 8 months ago who talked about Docker. We weren't even looking for Docker at the time, but starting to being able to go back on your calls and source candidates from conversations and things like that. Lauren, are you creating call guides and things like that for these technical roles on your side?
Yeah, absolutely. I have call guides for every rec that I work on, and so very similar to Kyle, I have my hiring managers have specific questions that they want us to ask that are maybe more technical in screens. So yeah, definitely able to do that on my end for recs that I support too. So
I love that.
echo a lot of what he said.
It's so exciting to hear that. I mean, a few years ago, recruiters weren't able to perform these technical phone screens because, we're not engineers or we're not laboratory technicians. And, we could ask the question, but then the onus was on us to try to understand and answer. And that's where there was a gap. But if we can collaborate with the hiring team or panel and share a few of those answers, we can really start to move things forward. Now, after your phone screen, are you typically sharing it via links via Slack, via your ATS? Are you sharing it with just the hiring manager? Are you sharing it with the hiring panel? Who kind of gets to hear those sound bites after a call?
Yeah, I'm usually just sharing. I'm creating a link and sharing it through our ATS and documenting it with my notes. So I still actively take notes so I can continue to just be engaged. Otherwise, my brain, I feel like, will think about something else. So I need to pay attention to the call. So I'll take notes and share it with my notes, the link, and then just send it directly to the hiring manager through the ATS. So they're typically the only ones that are seeing it on our end, not the whole interview panel.
Gotcha. Have you seen it help accelerate offers in a way? A lot of times within companies, like, the final stakeholder, an SVP or a, leader of a department or something like that would need to do the final interview or final call with someone to kind of approve the offer, so to speak. We've seen some companies actually be able to remove some of that, not have to wait 2 weeks to get that person on the phone because they're able to share some highlights and insights from previous conversations, whether it was the video call with the hiring manager or the phone screen with the recruiter. Have you seen accelerating offers or removing that final step in certain situations because you have more data as part of the submittal flow?
I think from what I've seen, it helps like the hiring manager and people have more in-depth and meaningful interviews. Like we can ask a lot of the basic questions about, hey, do you have this many years of experience in this technology? That way, the hiring manager can ask much more in-depth questions that are actually beneficial. Not that these aren't beneficial, but the ones that really kind of get down into it to see if they're the right fit for the team. We can ask all those upfront questions to save them time. So just make their interviews more meaningful and effective, I guess.
It's like we can ask the first layer question. They don't have to re-ask the same first level, but they can skip to the second and third level to dig in on those subsequent interviews. That's great. Lauren, what are you guys excited about today? I found recruiting is just a great profession to learn about companies, to learn about roles, to learn about how things get built. What keeps you guys going? What do you like about talent acquisition and recruiting, and what keeps you going?
I think that what I've just enjoyed recently is just learning about new tools. And honestly, like in my previous roles, we use completely different tools than what I'm using right now. So I just love the almost like endless like learning nature that is recruitment. You can recruit on a lot of different industries, a lot of different roles, and just trying to hone in more on how to just be better, I guess, and be the best sourcer, be the best recruiter possible. And Kyle and I, have been communicating about different ways that we can work together to add different tools to our tool belt. What are some other ways that we can source, outside of what we do right now? So that's that's what I'm really excited about, is just continuing to learn more about the industry, myself personally. That's what I would say.
I love it. What about you, Kyle?
I think it's just kind of fun to see like the people that you help recruit or hire and the work they end up doing in the company. It's nice to see that, them becoming an important role or doing something big, like our mobile team, for instance. Like when I started, when the year started, we had nobody. I think we had maybe the 2 backend engineers, but we didn't have the director. We didn't have the iOS engineers. So it was nice to bring those people on board, to see them get the app launched. Because that was in our leadership, that was one of their biggest concerns, or even the biggest concern of getting this app out, was hiring the team. Because it's a very competitive market. It's hard to find people or get people before someone else takes them. So it was nice to see those people come in and kill the project and get the app launched out to the App Store. Just kind of fun to see.
Fantastic. Well, that's so good to hear. Yeah, I feel like it's a unique profession. Like most folks don't set out to be recruiters. Like I didn't know about this profession in college, right? But kind of stumble into it, and then it's fascinating. Were either of you on the external side of recruiting, like working in an agency before you moved in-house, or did you go straight in-house? Curious about your career trajectory there.
That's how I guess my start in recruiting was, did that for about a year and 9 months. Did agency recruiting mostly on like mobile engineers.
Okay.
But it basically all software engineers, but mobile was the main focus. So yeah, that's kind of how I got my start in recruiting. And then after that went to like a little bit of a hybrid model where I wasn't internal working for a company, but I was basically placed at companies to recruit internally for them. So it's a mix between agency and internal. It's kind of a fun little, stepping stone to get into a role like this.
That's great. What about you, Lauren?
Prior to Everly, I worked at an agency for 4 years, and I've been here for just about a year. So that's my background is all external prior to this.
I did the same thing, kind of agency. You learn, cut your teeth, and learn about that commission environment and that kind of hyper intense agency work, and then in-house. There's other challenges, right? I think it's really interesting to see both sides of that, and then ultimately, I'm excited to see this kind of convergence of external recruiters and internal recruiters, like collaborating and working closer together and maybe reducing some of the tension, you know what I mean? Because I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of overlap, and especially with RPO and embedded recruiters, right? Like Kyle, you experienced that as like a hybrid on-site RPO recruiter. These talent teams are starting to look just different. Everybody's sitting in different places. You can, global recruiting teams, right? Yes, one sourcer sits here, hands off to a recruiter, hands off to an account manager, hands off to an internal recruiter. How can the 4 of us all quickly align and communicate and, accelerate steps between them, right? So that's something that we get really excited about at Honeit, because we've got agency recruiters using the system to introduce candidates to internal recruiters. And when you share more than just a resume, we can actually save time for the individual internal recruiter, right? Who can then forward that link to the hiring manager. And now we've got multiple people aligning from even just a single phone screen, right? And not having to have 3 or 4 conversations with the candidate for all the folks involved to be aligned. So that's something we're really excited about. Well, thank you, everybody, Kyle and Lauren, for joining today. I know this was kind of last minute, so I appreciate you jumping in, but we've really enjoyed working with you at Everly. Please let us know if there's anything you need from our end, but we're always looking for feedback, and that comes from our customers. So thank you.